Terence Crawford is stepping into the spotlight once again, calling his upcoming fight with Canelo Alvarez a generational fight, one he believes fans will be talking about for years to come. The date is set, September 13th, Las Vegas. The stakes couldn't be higher, at least in Crawford's eyes, but that's not how the majority of boxing fans see it. To them, this matchup feels more like a flashy sideshow than a true mega fight. Many have dismissed it as a one-time spectacle with no lasting legacy. They say it's the kind of fight you watch, maybe debate about for a few days, then move on from, like fast food, momentarily satisfying but ultimately forgettable. The EA. Criticism runs deep. Both fighters are seen as well past their primes. And for those fans who are hyping this as something comparable to when Sugar Ray Leonard jumped up in weight to fight Marvin Hagler, well, they're being called out for romanticizing the wrong things. Crawford, according to critics, isn't Leonard. Canelo, they argue, isn't Hagler. And this fight doesn't carry the same kind of magic. Dig a little deeper, and it's easy to see why some fans are skeptical. Crawford is making a massive leap in weight, climbing 2 full divisions to take on one of boxing's most seasoned champions. And not just take him on, Crawford is walking right into a title shot. No tune-ups, no proving grounds, just straight to the top. That doesn't sit right with a lot of people. In their view, Crawford didn't earn this super middleweight shot by fighting his way through the division. Instead, it feels like he cut the line, bypassing dangerous young contenders like Diego Pacheco, Christian Mbili, Osles Iglesias, Edgar Berlanga, and even the battle-tested Caleb Plant. These are fighters who've been grinding for years, waiting for a shot at gold. Meanwhile, Crawford, at age 37, parachutes in with no real resume in the division and grabs the biggest prize of all. Fans see that, and it stings. It makes them question the legitimacy of the matchup and wonder if this is more about money than legacy. And yet Crawford doesn't shy away from the narrative he's selling. I wanted to go from 147 to 168 just because I wanted to challenge myself, and that's the joy of it, he told Ring magazine. He talks about the fight like it's a spiritual quest, a chance to prove something not just to others, but to himself. Crawford insists that his speed and reach give him the edge over Canelo, who may have the size and power advantage, but in his eyes, lacks the finesse. Everybody says I'm crazy, Crawford added, brushing off the critics. But I've been fighting people bigger than me all my life. I've always been undersized and I always came out on top. It's a classic underdog pitch. The smaller guy with the bigger heart stepping into the fire and daring the impossible. That message resonates with some, but not all. For many, it's hard to ignore the commercial undertones that come with a blockbuster fight like this. It's not just about pride, it's also about the check, and everyone knows it. When you break down Crawford's recent performances, the doubts grow louder. His last outing against Israil Madrimov wasn't the dominant showcase many expected. Madrimov, a tough, technically sound fighter, seemed to outbox Crawford for much of the fight. Through the first 8 rounds, Madrimov looked sharper, cleaner, more precise, like he had a better grasp of the rhythm. Crawford struggled to find his range early on and had to rely on grit and stamina to claw back into the contest. In the end, the judges handed Crawford the win, but it didn't feel like a convincing victory. Not to everyone. Some had it 8-4 for Madrimov. Others pointed out that Crawford's punches lacked the pop they once had, that his reflexes weren't as razor sharp. For a fighter whose calling card has always been timing and IQ, that's a red flag. The fight raised questions about how much of Crawford's prime is really left, and whether he can find another gear at 168 pounds, especially against a veteran like Canelo. Of course, Canelo isn't without his own baggage. While still a global star, his recent performances have been underwhelming. He's been winning, yes, but not convincingly. More and more, fans have noticed his gas tank running dry after just a few rounds. Against Dimitri Bivol, against John Ryder, even against Jermell Charlo, he looked flat after the midpoint of the fight. The hands slow down. The head movement stops. He begins walking forward without throwing, hoping the judges stay on his side. And in fights like that, someone like Crawford, who thrives late, who finds a second wind when others are fading, becomes dangerous. That's the one opening believers are clinging to. If Canelo fades in the 5th, 6th, or 7th, Crawford could rally, just like he did against Madrimov. That's the script. That's the path to victory. But it's a narrow one. and even the most optimistic fans admit it's going to take a near-perfect performance from Crawford to pull it off. Chris Mannix, one of the sport's most respected analysts, summed it up bluntly. Crawford, as great as he is, this is effectively a welterweight moving up to 168. That's the crux of the matter. Yes, Crawford is an elite fighter, a pound-for-pound talent, but age is real, weight is real, time away from the ring is real. Since 2020, he's fought once a year. That's not enough to stay sharp, especially when you're about to face a powerful, experienced fighter who's lived at super middleweight for years. And it's not just about the power or size differential, it's about rhythm, timing, conditioning. Everything changes when you move up 2 divisions. The pace is different, the shots feel heavier, the margin for error shrinks. And if Crawford's performance against Madrimov is any indication, he might be walking into deeper water than he realizes. Even if he believes in himself, even if he feels like he's been underestimated, the reality in the ring could be very different. What makes this fight even more controversial is the way it disrupts what fans really wanted. The boxing public has been clamoring for Canelo to take on the biggest threats in or around his natural division. They wanted to see him face David Benavidez, the monster at 168 who's been knocking on the door for years. They wanted him to run it back with Dmitry Bivol, the man who beat him soundly in 2022, or take on Artur Beterbiev, a wrecking ball with dynamite in both hands. Instead, they're getting a fight that feels like a detour. Crawford, while respected, isn't the name fans were asking for. He's not the test people were waiting to see. And because of that, many feel let down, like Canelo is using his clout to avoid danger rather than chase greatness. For a guy who built his brand on taking on all comers, that perception stings. Some insiders believe this is more than just strategic matchmaking. It's a calculated move from Canelo's camp to avoid high-risk, low-reward scenarios. Benavidez brings the kind of pressure that could expose Canelo's aging legs. Bivol already showed the blueprint to beat him, and a rematch would be even riskier. Beterbiev might be older, but he's the hardest puncher in the sport. All 3 would be grueling, physical battles. Crawford, on the other hand, is a challenge, but a manageable one. He's lighter, slower at this weight, and hasn't had time to acclimate. Canelo might view this as a legacy fight on paper, but an easier night in practice. If that's the case, it's a smart business move, but one that comes at the cost of fan trust. Boxing loyalists don't forget when fighters take soft options. And if Canelo wins easily, the critics will be loud. On the other side, if Crawford wins, everything changes. It flips the narrative completely. A fighter going from 147 to 168 and dethroning a champion like Canelo would be unheard of in the modern era. It would be a shockwave across the sport, an all-time great upset that puts Crawford in a category few ever reach. But that's a massive if, and even those rooting for Crawford admit that it's more dream than expectation. Still, in a sport built on long shots and unlikely heroes, there's always that whisper of belief that maybe, just maybe, Crawford pulls it off and changes everything. The hype is already growing, but it's not the kind of excitement you usually see for a super fight. There's tension, doubt, even resentment. It's not just about who's going to win, it's about what this fight represents. For some, it's a cash grab. For others, it's one last dance between 2 aging stars. And for a small group, it's the possibility of witnessing something special, a fight that defies the odds and becomes unforgettable. September 13th might deliver all of that, or none of it. Either way, when Crawford and Canelo step into that ring under the lights of Las Vegas, they'll carry the weight of expectations, criticism, and legacy on their shoulders. And win or lose, neither man will leave unchanged. The atmosphere surrounding this fight is charged with layers of tension that go beyond just the physical matchup. There's a deeper storyline unfolding, a battle of legacies and reputations. Canelo Alvarez has been boxing's global ambassador for years, his name synonymous with dominance in multiple weight classes. But with every step up in age and weight, the cracks begin to show, and the narrative shifts from invincibility to vulnerability. Terence Crawford, on the other hand, has been the quiet assassin, methodical, precise, and often overlooked because he fights away from the media glare. This fight represents Crawford's chance to finally claim the spotlight and prove that he's not just a pound-for-pound great on paper, but a true transcendent fighter capable of rewriting history. The stakes for both men couldn't be more personal. It's not just about belts or money, it's about the story they want to leave behind.